I just finished The Housemaid. I read this because of the movie adaptation. The same Facebook group that mentioned Claire McIntosh as a good thriller writer also raved about this one. Unfortunately, Freida McFadden did not hit the same way that Claire McIntosh does, and I'm gonna tell you exactly why. So I think if you need a book to read like while traveling, if you for some reason forgot to pack your Kindle or pack a book to bring on your trip, I think just this popcorn, fast-paced thriller would work to pick up. But with all the options that we have for thrillers, I don't think this is top tier as a choice that I would give you. Now, if you're a fan of her books, that's fine. Be a popcorn thriller fan all you want. I'm glad that Freida has so many fans on her side for her writing. I heard she's a neurosurgeon. That also plays into why I think she writes the way she does, actually. So this book tells the story of Millie, who becomes a housemaid because she just got out of prison and she needs a job and she's having trouble finding a new job and keeping a new job. Right away, Millie was fine as a protagonist, but then I got more and more that I really didn't care for her. Part of it started with the lusting over the gardener or landscaper of the same house that she's gonna be the maid for. And also the husband of this family. Infidelity occurs, which is also a problem I had, and I almost DNF'd for those two reasons alone, because I don't like those things in books generally. I consistently, from that point on, was really thinking about DNFing because it really wasn't capturing my attention. But everything I read online said, well, just wait till part 2. It picks up in part 2. Plus the ending is crazy. So I continued on. I had the audiobook. It was easy to push through. Having it on 2 times speed faster than I ever listened to an audiobook. This being more of a popcorn thriller, there's very little details you need to catch on to, so it was easier for me to just turn up the narrator's speed of talking to get through this faster. Unfortunately, the ending was not quite as twisty and crazy. Having read a bunch of thrillers and already guessing at some things like pieces fitting together too well, that it was kind of obvious to me as a reader. Really did not like this. Reestablished for me in the year of 2026 that I need, like, if I get that inkling of questioning whether I need to DNF something, I should just DNF it rather than having a rant review like this one and leaving that poor review. But I think other people also needed to know if they were in my shoes while reading, which I left that in my review, that if you're even thinking about it and you're going online and seeing everyone say you should stick it out, I personally should not have stuck it out. So that's gonna be all my non-spoiler thoughts. I'm gonna get into spoilers now. So if you want to see the movie, I actually think you should see the movie and save your time, save your hours and just go see the movie personally. But if you're going to see the movie or if you plan on reading the book yourself, I'm going to get into spoilers and why specifically things did not work for me. The first instance of the gardener lusting, or the landscaper Enzo, he lusts over this landscaper and talks about not getting a lot since she went to prison at 17 and that whole thing, and how when she got out, how she basically just a bunch of fantasizing about things she didn't get to do in prison. That was one point that I should have just DNF'd. And then the second point was so the husband of this family is Andy's super rich and has a lot of problems with his wife, and that his wife Nina is acting super crazy, and they wind up going to an opera together, Millie and Andy, and then things happen after that because they get too drunk to drive back home after Nina's away at camp bringing her daughter to camp, and then that happens, and so infidelity happens. They fall in love, and then we find out that Nina actually wasn't crazy. She was just being held hostage basically in the marriage with Andy, and Andy would lock her in this attic every time she did something that in his mind was bad behavior, that clothes were a privilege, lights were a privilege, so any little thing he would throw her up in the attic for, but then act super sweet every other time, and she would never know when she would be punished up in the attic. So we come to find out that, and then we find out that Nina was acting crazy, so that basically positioning it so that Millie was the victim, and that Andy would actually fall in love with Millie and take Millie in Nina's place as the wife to abuse. We also come to find out that Enzo knew, and that's why he warned Millie at the very beginning that it was dangerous to be in that house. And Enzo was gonna help Nina escape, so Enzo was also part of this plan reluctantly because he didn't want to put Millie in that position either. The reason why Nina chose Millie as her maid is because she knew she went to prison, and she went to prison at 17 for beating up and murdering I think it was like a football player or something that had been sexually assaulting her roommate, and she basically beat him to death to protect her roommate. So Nina figured if she hired Millie, that then she would kill Andy, which is ultimately what ends up happening. So Millie gets locked in the attic, and then she flips it on Andy and steals the key and swaps places, so Andy's in the attic and basically does the same torture to him that he's been doing to Nina and for one night to Millie, and he ultimately dies from that. And then we come to find out that Andy's mom actually did the same thing to him at the very end, which I guess was supposed to be the shocking twist. It was kind of obvious to me once we got Nina's perspective that that's why Andy was the way that he was, because his mom, obviously that kind of behavior comes from learned, like it's a learned behavior. So I guess if you didn't take psychology or know anything about psychology, you maybe couldn't guess that. Which then I had questions, because at the end, Andy's father is so meek and kind and nice and respectful. And it makes me question whether he also has some of the abuse from Andy's mom, but that goes unanswered. Lots of like suspension of disbelief. There weren't just red flags for Millie. It was like, because Enzo basically said this house is dangerous, like that was the red flag, but then everything after that was like a speakerphone of why, like, there's plenty of other jobs you could get. You could go to McDonald's if you really need a job. Like, there's plenty of prisoner, like, help programs for former prisoners to reintegrate you into society, to better you. So I really don't understand why this maid job was the only job. So my theory, like, I'm also upset because my theory was darker, but so much seems like it would have been so much more interesting to explore, which I figured something was weird about this house and Andy and Nina, and I figured Nina was just being crazy for crazy's sake to appear that way. But my theory is especially after they came back from the doctor and said she was infertile or couldn't have kids like Andy wanted, that they were gonna kidnap Millie because she could be a surrogate for a child that they want so badly. So I thought Nina and Andy were going to lock her in the attic for that purpose, which then you then could question, once she is the surrogate, well, would they kill her, or would they just keep her in the attic, and maybe this is to basically like farm children to then sell or human traffic and make money. Like, the fact that they're rich, maybe. And along with this theory that I had, I thought Enzo was like an undercover FBI or police or something, rather than kind of just normal, like, chivalrous guy here to step in and help. I thought they knew something was going on with this couple, and they sent out an undercover agent to pose as this Italian who couldn't speak English. But no, it wasn't that interesting. So I also kept reading because I wanted to see if the crazy ending was in any of that. But also, once it got to Nina's perspective, I was like, I don't know if my surrogate theory is true anymore. But my Enzo theory could have been true still. because he could have been there because they wanted to catch Andy, but none of that happens or was anywhere near what it was. So back to how I said at the beginning that Freida is a pen name and she's actually like a neurosurgeon, so that makes me believe that her brain is more of a logic brain. So when you take that to writing form, it's not going to be the creative side of your brain. Like, it's still you can still be creative if you're analytical and logical more than like my brain, where I'm constantly thinking in pictures and not numbers and not concise information. I think she needs to have puzzle pieces that fit perfectly together in her book to fit perfectly together, to just because that's how her brain works, and that's exactly how this feels. Is you are given each puzzle piece, and then at the end they all fit together in a perfect puzzle. And it's not like intricate pieces of this puzzle, it's just very concise. This piece fits with this piece, and then you get this as your final picture. So I think that's also maybe why it doesn't work for me, because I need like out of the box thinking, and I don't always need perfect answers in my thrillers. And like even the thrillers I end up figuring out by the end, and that my theory crafting is right. Some of those I actually enjoy, and I like the fact that I was able to figure out that that was gonna happen or end up that way. And then I also like being surprised. So I think this was just, I hate to use this word, but like it was too simplistic of pieces to the puzzle, that I wanted something, I wanted thicker puzzle pieces. I wanted more depth. I wanted the width to be larger than a centimeter. So I think I just wanted that, and I didn't get that with this. Let me know if you've read this, what you thought about it, if you're a fangirl of Freida, if you're not, if you read maybe one of her books and decided she wasn't for you. Which one was that? Was it The Housemaid? At this point, I don't think she's going to be an author for me. So this is probably my first and last of Freida that I will read. But as always, as long as you hit that subscribe button, I can see everyone in the next video. But if I lay down and I play